So, Greg has already encouraged us to sell everything we have and follow Jesus. Take the plunge to zero. You thinking of turning this into a talk show or something? I mean, I think you got some real...
This is an attractive notion.
It's an attractive message.
Get rid of all my dough and just trust God.
I like this. But the point being, there's a sense in which we have to depart from the love of money and enter into following Jesus. That's going to look different in everyone's life. It doesn't always mean going to zero financially.
Sure.
But it could. It has in your life.
Yes.
Has in my life.
Right. And it could happen in anyone's life if we have an exogenous event like a market collapse or
like
some
a market
trouble,
collapse.
right?
Absolutely.
And then it's a bit forced upon us.
Right.
So it's good to even prepare in hearing these things and talking about them now, just in case.
Right. Let's talk about that issue, the investment issue. Let's just say that, because it's a question, I'm sure you get all the time.
Yeah.
Greg, I've got some extra money. I want to invest it wisely. I want to invest it in a godly way.
Great.
How should I invest it? Should I be afraid to invest in the stock market?
Great.
How should I do that?
Yeah, so I get this question all the time because it's very common. People always want to know, like, okay, so if there is some trouble coming, how do I find shelter in the storm? Mm-hmm. What do I do? How do I change my asset allocation? What do I do in terms of where my money is parked and so forth? Sure. But before answering that question, I think let's answer the earlier question of where do we go from here? So if God calls us into a situation of trusting Him, right? What does that look like? For me, personally, it wasn't a sell everything like the rich young ruler. It was more, I'm asking you to keep going even though you're going to run out of money. So how do I keep going? How do we provide for the basics of our family's needs and just essentials, food, clothing, oil? Why would God ever ask us to go through something like that?
Sure.
That's like crazy.
Sure.
And because it was crazy. It was very difficult.
Right. God wants to bless us.
He does.
If we keep His commandments. There's sort of this idea of like a quid pro quo.
I'm trying to honor God in everything I do and have a deeper relationship and walk. And now He's asking me to go to zero. Like, how does that work and what will happen?
Right.
But what I now understand is the great benefit of having to experience that is to learn, who do I really trust?
Okay.
Do I trust me and what I can do, the income that I can make? Do I trust my bank account and how full it is? Or do I really believe God at His word, that He will provide? And a word from God is more valuable than just the bread to eat. Kind of like when Esau gave up his inheritance for a bowl of porridge. It's like, what's more important, my spiritual inheritance by faith or my provision for the day I need to eat?
So you would rather have a word from God than $1 million?
Yes. And I think God
Do you have $1 million? Maybe we could work out a trade. I'm just saying I'd be willing to do a little Esau here.
Yeah, so you'd go for the $1 million.
I would go for the $1 million.
Right. Well, who wants to be a millionaire? Jonathan Frizz.
I want to be a millionaire. I've never had $1 million. I'd like to know what it's like.
That's cool.
I know you've had $1 million before,
I have,
so maybe you know.
But you know what's so much more precious and valuable, all kidding aside, is you go through a crisis, you go through a difficulty, and God is, as a loving father, is asking us as a son to say, son, I want to show you something.
Okay.
I want to help you.
Okay.
I want to teach you. And we were talking earlier on our other videos about coming out of the world's ways, Babylon, if you want to call it that. And so it's really a test of the heart. Do we believe in the tangible, or do we believe in God who is supernatural and God who is spirit?
Right, in the invisible.
In the invisible. Because the tangible is what's in my bank account, what my income stream is coming in, what my expenses are going out, and making it. That's tangible. That's real.
I agree.
So spreadsheets help us count the beans to figure out, do I have enough? But the problem is, if the beans don't add up, it puts a pressure on us to perform or somehow scramble around for money or get that income by hook or by crook, by persuasion or beating somebody up. No, we don't do things that we shouldn't. But in all seriousness, there is a definitive pressure to have this money available to us because it's tangible. And in our economy today, the U.S. economy, we need this money to survive. How am I going to pay the bills?
Absolutely, absolutely. You don't want to default on your bills. You don't want to not pay your bills. That's not honoring to God. It's not honoring to
We want
people.
all our bills to be paid. We want all of our things to be taken care of. But sometimes it has to get a little messy, and a few eggs have got to be broken in order for God to get us to the other side of trusting Him in a new way. So that's back to this radical notion. It may be radical to come out and to learn these things. It may be so radical that, have you ever had to be dependent on God for food? Have you ever had to be dependent on God for basics and essentials?
On a day-to-day basis.
On a day-to-day basis. And how does God come through when that happens? And our experience has been when we put our trust in God, we never went begging for bread. We never ran out of food. We never ran out of gas. We never ran out of oil. All of our needs were met, just like God said. It just wasn't the way that it used to be done. It wasn't the, hey, I've got this tens of thousands of dollar cash flow coming in, and that will do it.
That would definitely do it.
That does it, but if you don't have that, then what? Your hands are tied behind your back, so what do? But if we really believe God at His word, He does come through. And He can solve a need with or without money. And that's kind of the breaking of dependency of money. So it's like almost as though God had to break within me the dependency on money. Money is not the only thing that could fix problems. I can fix problems. So if you have a need that's financial, watch what I can do with it or without it.
So sometimes we have a financial situation, and you're saying it may not be just a financial situation. God can fix it in different ways. I mean, the thing that strikes me about that is that finances are ultimately about people and about relationships.
Right.
So if you have a financial problem, there may be a relational solution. Like, say you owe me $2,000.
Right.
I could decide to forgive that, and no money was ever exchanged. It just disappeared.
Yeah, you're making a great point, which is it more valuable to have the relationship, or is it more valuable to have the money to solve that need?
Right.
If you have a good relationship with someone who you've worked with before in the past, like as a service provider, or a lot of business has been done over the years. If you have a good relationship, maybe there will be some grace to get you through a tough time.
Sure.
And maybe you don't have to freak out at home like in a bubble saying, how am I ever going to pay this creditor? How am I ever going to get that guy his check? How am I ever going to do that? Maybe he voluntarily decides by grace that he's going to work with you, help you out.
Right.
And you know what that is? That's a great sign for the future, and is much more valuable to God in God's economy to have two people working together who are willing to help each other out, work it out. That's like loving your neighbor as yourself, because if someone who has a heart sees someone else in that situation, they say, if I were in their shoes, how would I work with them?
Right.
So you get two kind of reactions when you have that kind of demand for payment.
Sure.
You have the relational reaction with some grace, and then you have the, unless you pay me, I'm going to take you to court for everything you have.
Right.
Unless you satisfy this debt right away, I'm just going to beat the snot out of you and take whatever I can.
Take your lunch money.
And I don't care for any excuse. So there's a big contrast.
Is that the way God would do it, that latter one?
Yeah, in your life. No, but one of the taboos, one of the things that's really tough for people to deal with is, what do I do with creditors when I can't pay a bill?
Right.
That freaks people out. And it's a scary prospect. If you haven't been there before, as we hadn't been, look, all of my life and career had been, bills are issued, bills are paid, always on time, credit score's high, like everything's working.
Right.
Never would we miss payments. We would purposely be diligent in making sure everything got paid.
Right.
But when God put us in a situation where that wasn't the case anymore, it's scary.
And it's also scandalous, and we're going to pick this up, the scandal of what you're talking about, in our next segment.